and I am a second year PhD student over at the School of Veterinary Medicine. So I studied veterinary biosciences over at the vet school in Glasgow again. It's a course that's primarily geared towards understanding the science that underpins veterinary medicine. It was quite broad, but neuroscience was the subject that stood out to me the most because of how debilitating diseases can be that affect the nervous system. I really liked the way lecturers would use their own research to teach, and thought that research would be an interesting career to get into. I did a summer research project at the end of my second year and really enjoyed it. So I went to the Modern Research Institute in Edinburgh for my MSci year. When I returned to Glasgow for my final year project, I was definitely hooked on research and knew that I wanted to do a PhD next because I felt it would be a more supported route into research. I started looking for PhDs in my final year, but I didn't secure a PhD until about a year after graduation. I knew that I wanted to look at neurodegenerative diseases, but I tried to keep my eye on neuroscience projects in general. The project had to be funded and ideally not in Scotland, just so that I could have a change of scenery. I didn't have any specific ideas in mind, so I mainly used findaphd.com, and I also went on to relevant charity websites to see if they had any projects on offer. When a project did look interesting, I researched it a bit, and then left it for a few weeks, depending on when the deadline was. And then if it still looked interesting, then I applied for it. I tried to keep an open mind, but I also wanted to make sure that it was going to be a project that I would enjoy doing for the next 3 to 5 years. I also was still in contact with previous supervisors and had been asking them for advice about people, places, and applications. I wrote a few emails to people that they had suggested, but unfortunately they didn't have any spaces at the time. I was also looking at jobs with short-term contracts that would allow me to gain some more new skills while I was trying to look. So I did end up sending quite a few PhD and job applications out, and ended up with 5 interviews at the end of it. So the interviews had various layouts, but almost all of them required a presentation, usually about experience, but sometimes you had to read a specific paper and then present it or present the findings to a group of people. I asked for feedback from every unsuccessful interview, and for me, they always told me that it was because a successful candidate had more relevant experience than I did. Eventually, one of my old supervisors had a PhD come up in his lab, and it was in collaboration with other people from the vet school and the MVLS college. When I read the advertisement, I thought it was perfect because it was looking at a neurodegenerative disease in dogs, and it also has some similarities to a human disease. The only doubt I had about it was that it was in Scotland at the same place that I did my undergrad, but I knew that I was going to get on with my supervisors. It was funded through the vet school. It was a perfect topic, and it was at a Russell Group university. So I applied, I was interviewed, and then started the position last summer. So the first few months of the PhD were filled with reading, paperwork, lab training, and courses. And having been out of the lab environment for a year, it did take me a while to get used to it again. And sometimes it felt that everything was going wrong and that everything I did was a mistake. And for quite a while, I had the mindset of it's a PhD, it's meant to be hard, just get on with it. But after 6 months, I was really overwhelmed, and I felt like I was never going to cope with the workload or make any progress. I eventually discussed this with my supervisor, and they assured me that progress was fine, and if there were any issues, then they would have told me about it by now. So after that, I did relax, and I started to get used to the lab work again, meaning that I could eventually get the exciting results that brought the kind of spark for research back again. I started to get more of an understanding of what we were actually trying to achieve with the project as the results came in. And I've also had so many opportunities throughout the MVLS college to present my research, both with and without results. I became a lab demonstrator and loved being able to help students understand the subject, and it's made me think about lecturing in the future, so I'll definitely be pursuing any kind of opportunities. COVID has obviously disrupted the project, but we have made a mitigation plan to try and make up for any lost lab time. But the pandemic has actually introduced some positives. So some international conferences have been moved online, and you might not have had the chance to go to them physically in normal times. So that's been quite good. And also there's just been a lot more awareness about mental health for everyone, never mind just PhD students. So to conclude, finding a PhD can be tricky and may involve a lot of rejection, but don't forget that you did manage to achieve your first degree or degrees. So if you really want to do a PhD, then don't give up. It can be hard to get feedback on applications, but always ask for feedback on interviews in case there's anything that you can improve on for the next ones. Think outside the box if you start to get nowhere with applications. So are there any short-term jobs that you could start to look into and try and develop your skills more? Don't be afraid to ask for advice from past supervisors or lecturers. And when you start a PhD, it can take you a while to settle in, but just be patient, talk to other PhD students, and especially speak to your supervisors. Finally, the pandemic has caused a lot of disruption, but a lot of positive changes are happening now as a result, so try to embrace them. Thank you.